Let's start with Vietnam. Safer owned Vietnam. I mean, he spent years there, and by the time that he got, Safer owned Vietnam, but by the time he came to 60 Minutes, he had been out of Vietnam. I mean, what he did was history there. He didn't do an immense amount of it after that time because he felt that he had been there. And that was left to, well, Bradley was a Vietnam correspondent. I don't know that Croft was, and Leslie was not. Rather, of course, who was on 60 Minutes, had been. And I spent some time there. One Vietnam story which I found fascinating, in 1967, and this was not 60 Minutes, but in 1967 I went there for 3 months and was the senior man present at that particular time. And this was also the time of a television strike, a newsman's strike in the United States, as a result of which Walter Cronkite was replaced by Arnold Zenker, as it was the CBS Evening News with Arnold Zenker for a period of some months. The only people who could work, the only correspondents who could work, were people overseas. And I happened to be in Vietnam. As a result of which, I owned the Vietnam story, the lead on the CBS Evening News during that period. I led the show 31 times from Vietnam. I got to know Nguyen Van Thieu. I got to know Nguyen Cao Ky. I got to understand how many people were, South Vietnamese, were deserting, and was able to tell that kind of story. CBS News, and as far as that's concerned, the other networks too, had, I think, an immense amount to do with the way that the war turned out, in the sense that the American people, little by little, were disillusioned by what they were seeing. I believe it was the New Yorker magazine, I believe back then, that called it the living room war. It was the living room war in America because we began to see for ourselves our countrymen getting bloodied badly, beginning to smoke dope a lot, beginning to cut off the ears of, I mean, it was a brutalizing war in a variety of ways. And it was a war that, when you say wrong war, wrong place, wrong time, I've been back to Vietnam just 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and for a replay of the massacre at My Lai, where American troops slaughtered 504 defenseless women, children, and old men. And to see Vietnam today, this beautiful hamlet, and the Vietnamese people even today really like Americans immensely, despite all. But we set them back so badly, it seems to me, in the name of what? Saving them from communism? They're communists today in Vietnam. Vietnam is a communist country. And a Hanoi businessman, when I was there, told me, but the only shooting war that we know of is the one between Coke and Pepsi. The fact of the matter is, it's still a poor country. It has not developed the tourism that everybody expected it was going to develop up to now. It has not gotten a Gorbachev yet, or a Deng Xiaoping yet. There is no figure that says, in effect, to get rich is glorious yet. And we committed a crime, as far as I am concerned, in Vietnam. Crime against America, crime against Vietnam. I got the opportunity to travel with General Westmoreland from one end of the country to another. and to see the conditions in which people, our men, had to live out in the field. To capture that point up there and to lose who knows how many men to do it, and then the next day it's recaptured by the enemy. 58,000 people die, treasure lost, for the reason that we Americans, insufficiently understood Vietnam, didn't know Vietnam's history, didn't know Vietnam's culture, got ourselves involved in a civil war, their civil war. And the line that they kept feeding us was that if we if we were to lose Vietnam, then the dominoes would fall all over Southeast Asia. And Southeast Asia would be one big communist mass. Well, the dominoes fell. And it's a hotbed of capitalism in Southeast Asia today, with all of the volatility involved.